Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to our webinar participants from around the globe. Welcome to today's tender information webinar sponsored by RECAP, which will provide an overview of a tender seeking proposals for the establishment of a Center for Sub-Saharan Transport Leadership. I'm Raquel Alcega, Senior Lead for Development Data here at Devex, and I will be your moderator today. Before we get started, I would like to do a quick sound check to make sure everyone can hear me okay. If you can hear me, please type yes into the chat box. Okay, great. It looks like everyone can hear, so we will jump in. It has long been recognized that one of the main constraining factors to the development of roads and the transport sector throughout sub-Saharan Africa is the availability of capable, confident, and professional leaders. This lack of leadership is evident in government roads agencies and the private sector, and it contributes to the inefficiency and corruption in the management of the transport sector. Therefore, RECAP, managed by Carno Emerging Markets, is seeking proposals for the establishment of a Center for Sub-Saharan Transport Leadership. During today's meeting, representatives from RECAP will provide an overview of the objectives of the project, discuss the terms of reference, and answer all your questions about the tender. Today, I'm joined by Kululeko Leta, Deputy Team Leader for Infrastructure Research, and Edson Madeira, Procurement Specialist at RECAP. We're delighted to be able to draw on their expertise during today's webinar. And in a bit, I'm just going to hand it over to Kululeko to tell us more about the tender itself. And at the end, we will have plenty of time to answer your questions. You will be able to enter questions using the chat box in the Ready Talk window. Feel free to submit questions at any time during this webinar, and I will be keeping track of them, and hopefully we will be able to answer as many as time allows. If you have any technical problems during the webinar, please send a message through the chat box, and one of my colleagues will assist you. Before we get started, we would like to also take a poll to interact with the audience. So right now you should see a light in your screen about where are you currently based in. We would like to know a bit more of our current audience for today. So yeah, feel free to submit your answers. It seems some people are still replying. Okay, it seems we have many of you based in Africa today. Europe follows closely as well. Okay, so then the next question is more about who you are and if you work in higher education or in the academia space. This is an easy one. It's yes or no. Well, it seems we have a pretty equal audience. You know, half of you come from academia or education institutions. That's great. And then the last question that we would like to ask is, where do you currently have projects, or where do you are currently working, implementing those projects in which world regions? And again, Africa seems to be the leading region. Followed by Asia and South America. Sounds great. Perfect. So yeah, with further ado, I'll hand it over to Kululeko, who will, make a presentation and talk about the project and the terms of reference.
Yes, welcome everyone to our live webinar. The way I intend to proceed with this is to just go through some highlights of these terms of reference. I will not attempt to go through it section by section, but I will, because I appreciate that most of you, if not all, have read through the terms of reference, and you have a pretty good idea of what the contents are, but I'll just ride through and give you an outline of some of the key aspects that we would like to just present, and in the interest of time, and then we can get or Edson, my colleague, will also go through a few things, and then we will go into the question and answer session in the remaining time. I'd like to look initially at the project context, as indicated in section 1.2. The Transport Leadership Development Program, TSLDP, is a capacity building project which is designed to enhance the technical, managerial, and leadership skills of transport professionals in sub-Saharan Africa. And furthermore, the TSLDP will be a major contributor to RECAP's objective to build capacity and understanding of the need to undertake research on transport. So that is a broader outline of the main objectives of this project. You also be aware that there was a scoping study that was carried out under phase 1, where a delivery mechanism was recommended as a sustainable way of carrying out the TSLDP, and that this delivery mechanism was going to be the Center for Sub-Saharan Transport Leadership, which we call the CSSTL. So this will be an institution based, or this will be a program based in an existing institution in Sub-Saharan and supported by recognized international organizations. So the setup at the moment is that RECAP will support the establishment of the CSSTL for the first 2 years, and a counterpart DFID program, which has just commenced, the HVT, has a longer time frame than RECAP, a slightly longer time frame than RECAP, and would also possibly support the program for the 2 years after the end of the RECAP program. SSTL. And then we have the delivery options, which are basically the courses that we expect the program to run. That is the mentoring program, the CPD courses, and the postgraduate courses. This program needs to be anchored in sub-Saharan Africa initially. There are organizations, existing organizations in Africa, like ASANDRA. ASANDRA supports the development of young professionals in Southern Africa, and was one of the institutions that motivated for the formulation and subsequent implementation of this program. So the project will need to identify partners in the region. In addition to ASANDRA, there are regional structures and organizations such as the African Road Maintenance Funds Association, the African Roads and Transport Research Forum, ATREF, structures such as ECOWAS, the African Union. Those will need to be explored during the initial stages and beyond of the project, to ensure that there is awareness, there is understanding of what the objectives are, and to seek partnerships with these entities. I will just emphasize these aspects here. So the overall aim of the project is to provide a sustainable transport sector leadership program that can be expanded into the whole of the sub-Saharan region in the first instance, for the ongoing development of a professional leadership core for roads and transportation. At a later stage, it may be possible to expand into Asia, and that should also be that option should also be expanded and considered in the establishment plan that the bidding organizations would be presenting to recap. The CSSTL as a delivery mechanism or as a recommended delivery mechanism is considered the most sustainable, cost-effective and self-sufficient option, which will lay the foundations for the establishment and implementation of training programs in future. So just reiterating the purpose of the project now is to develop and establish a self-sustaining CSSTL based at an institution in sub-Saharan Africa and with strong links with international and African tertiary institutions, universities. Our view is that the CSSTL or the establishment plan should be in place before the end of this year to enable it to provide sufficient time to develop and grow in the final 2 years of recap support. So then during of HVT, that's the high volume transport research program, will be explored, and then all the plans will be put in place. So we are seeking through the appointed consortium that will provide these services for the CSSTL to manage these costs on a cost recovery basis as a viable, self-sustaining business beyond the respective lifespans of recap and HVT. So that's the expectation. This is a capacity building project. As recap is focused on research, this is more of a capacity building project that will enhance the implementation of research activities. Of importance is the uptake and embedment of the knowledge and skills that would have been developed in the TSLDP. And we need to have a monitoring program, a continuous monitoring program of the uptake and embedment. And this should be part of the pointed to gender balance, which we view quite seriously and would expect professionals to participate, but the female of the participants. So that is a key aspect to be considered. I will not go through the scope of work because I think it is clearly itemized, and these are clear, and you would be aware of each item in detail. But I just want to look at the general aspect, the overall aspect, which I've also said previously. The implementation phase of the project for developing the business plan, establishing the CSSTL, and running the courses will run for a period of 2 years. And that will be supported by recap up to 2020. And then by the HVT program to 2022. So that's something that will be explored. I mean, the possible involvement of HVT will be explored during the course of the implementation of the first 2 years. Okay, the deliverables, I think those are clear. Unless there are questions later, then we can explain. But I also want to go to number 5, fifth section, implementation arrangements. This describes what we expect from or who we expect to actually carry out this assignment, and who are the purpose of our procurement process. We are looking for a recognized tertiary institution, university, or a consortium of tertiary institutions, universities, and company with complementary competencies for this assignment. And these will be appointed for by RECAP for a period up to the end of RECAP in July 2020, with the specific mission of driving the development of CSSTL. RECAP will accept proposals from consortia made up of tertiary academic institutions and commercial companies. It is, however, critical that a tertiary institution, university, be part of a requirement. Now, the other key thing to also note is that the cost development costs will not be funded by RECAP. So the business plan will need to take full account of this in establishing the business. And where possible, existing cost offerings at various levels, especially CPD costs, could also be considered. So that, I think, would also assist with your preparation of your bids, to actually understand what the expectation is and what resources are provided for by the project, and what resources would need to be appointed entity. We recognize that this is not straight out and straightforward sort of tender process. That's why we encourage bidding organizations to develop and propose their own methodology, work approaches, and team structures to meet of the project aims and objectives of these terms of reference. So bidders are encouraged to submit variant or innovative proposals that meet the objective of the project. So that's also an important thing. The assumption or the expectation is that this is, to all those interested in bidding, this would be an area that you are fully experienced in and have expertise in carrying out, so you would have better ideas, innovative ideas, how this can be implemented in a sustainable manner. So we will be welcoming variant proposals from yourselves. I will also not go into the requirements for personnel, but we're looking at two key personnel that will drive this project. And of course, as I've just said, propose different team structures, different personnel, but ensuring that the key personnel indicated are also part of it. So that again leaves you with the leeway to propose that you believe would enable you to carry out this assignment effectively and in accordance with the intended objectives of the assignment. One last thing I wanted to also highlight is that under Section 7, milestones and payment schedule, there is quite a tight program at the beginning, the first 12 weeks, or at the end of the first 12 weeks. We would expect the interim report and draft business plan to have been prepared, and there will be details provided on the ranking of possible host institutions with clear criteria for such, recommendation for CSSTL institution and location, program structure, candidate selection, procedure and outcomes, courses, etc. And then a draft business plan should be in place for assessment. So it is a tight time frame, but we expect that the appointed entity would make serious efforts to comply, and of course with the reasonable flexibility applicable in certain instances. So I think for myself, that's all I wanted to say, to highlight. So we will await your questions or any requests for clarifications as we proceed. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that excellent presentation, Kululeko. We just got our first question, and which is basically asking if you could summarize the key objectives of the project and the requirements of the terms of reference that must be part of a variant solution.
I don't think we would want to prescribe that at the moment. I think the bidders should be able to assess the TOR in its entirety and then present a variant or a proposal that can include variant aspects. It can be in different aspects, or it can be in its entirety. So we want to leave that to the bidding organizations to prepare their own proposals without our influence or suggestions.
Right. A follow-up question would be that if you would accept a bid that which doesn't include a physical center, for example.
Yeah, as I said, if it meets the objectives of this program, of the CSSTL and the TSLDP, that will be considered. We will consider proposals that are presented, and the bidders will have to demonstrate that would definitely meet the objectives of the program. So if that is demonstrated, that then will be considered.
Great. Good to know. Yeah, some of people in our audience are asking if we will have the recording, and yes, this recording will be made available to all of you after the webinar. But if right now, if you have any more specific questions for the team lead Kululeko and Edson, feel free to answer them, ask them right now. And yeah, following your presentation, Kululeko, I was wondering if you have any type of expertise that you're looking in particular, like in the terms of reference you mentioned the two specialists or the project team that you expect to carry out
yes.
the tender. Are you how flexible are you with their qualifications and kind of like is all these is their CVs from African higher education institutions or Western institution? Is that contemplated in their qualifications and in how you assess their expertise?
Yeah, if I get your question, we do not. There are no requirements for types of person or location where they practice their skills, be they African, European, or we don't make that distinction. That's why it is not part of this requirements that's listed here. You'll notice that you ask about the flexibility in terms of qualifications. you will notice that we include also equivalent qualification. So if the bidding entity believes that the person they intend to put forward for a particular position possesses an equivalent qualification, and it also says that in field or even have relevant capacity. So there's a very, very flexible and array of qualifications that will be considered. So it's not restrictive at all.
Perfect. That's great to know. We also got some more questions from our audience with regards to the previous question that we asked. There's someone asking if they can submit a bid to just a part of the tender, for example, to offer the programs, but not to host the center.
Sorry, I didn't get that question clearly.
Yes, no worries. Someone in our audience is asking if they can bid to just one part of the tender, for example, like to offer programs, but not to host the whole center.
I think those will be variations that can also be put forward for consideration. I cannot give a definitive answer on whether it's a yes or no, but I can say that if there are variations, that those are variations that we can consider, and again the key issue is that there must be a demonstration of how that attains or that helps in achieving the objectives of the program. So if that is demonstrated, and we believe it's sufficiently demonstrated, then yes, it will be considered.
Perfect. Right. So the bidders really have to try to feed their proposals and achieve the goals that you are set in the terms of reference. Great. Someone else is also asking if you have a deadline for clarifications, so for people to submit questions and get answers on that. Those.
Edson, would you like
that's the 17th of August. The deadline for requesting clarifications on the tender is the 17th of August. Yeah. And just to add on that, we'll provide responses to everyone who's registered their interest or requested the tender documents in writing at the same time. So the responses to any queries will be sent to everyone interested in the bid.
Perfect. And then the final deadline for submissions of proposals, just as a reminder, is the 3rd of September at 5 p.m. UK time. Great. Someone else.
That's correct.
Yes. Someone else is also asking if what are the characteristics that a university or a higher education institution should comply to be able to bid in this tender.
The characteristic of the university or the tertiary institution?
Yes.
I think the institution itself, because of the nature of the assignment, which deals with the transport sector, I mean, it's the transport sector leadership development program. So if the tertiary institution has experience or has as its core activity the development of transport courses and they're involved in transport development, yes, they would qualify, but they will need to assess whether the requirements of the terms of reference are aligned with their core business. And as we are saying, this can be done by a consortium, so they don't need to have all the prerequisites or qualifications themselves. They can enter into partnerships with other institutions to complement the skills and the expertise that is required. So which is the reason why we're not just saying a university should do this, but we need a consortia entities that complement each other towards satisfying or achieving the objectives of the assignment.
Mm-hmm.
And just to add on that, we highly encourage, as Khululeko mentioned, we highly encourage partnerships and consortium between commercial companies and universities, so that we can try and achieve this ambitious project, because it is an ambitious project, and we don't necessarily expect everyone to have all the required expertise and skills within one pool. So we do highly encourage partnerships and consortium between different organizations, tertiary institutions, and companies. But I want to reiterate that it is critical, and it's a requirement for participation in the tender, that a tertiary university organization or institution is part of the bid.
Thank you, Edson. I think your clarification is quite important, and it's how most development projects are better carried out through consortiums and partnerships, and pulling expertise from different fields together. We have quite some more questions, so if you're not too tired, I'm going to keep going with some of them. One of our members is asking if the educational management expert has to be employed by the university, or if this could be changed under a variant solution eventually.
Which experts, please? Didn't get that clearly.
The educational management expert.
Okay. If it should be employed by the university or by the.
Yes. The question is why it has to be employed by the university, and if it's really strict this, or if it could be changed under a variant solution.
Management specialist who has got the prerequisites in terms of the experience that is required. That person may or may not be employed by a university. It may be employed by another, maybe a training institution. We don't know where that person would be coming from. But what we will be looking at is the experience and expertise in the areas that are required for this assignment.
Great. Great to know. And now one question that is a bit more.
We will provide that qualification in writing. I note that the question comes straight from the terms of reference. So based on Khululeko's response, we'll provide a clarification in writing so that it's on record.
That will be perfect. Yeah. So when the terms of reference mention that the educational management expert needs to be employed by the university, you will clarify that that's not as strict as it shows, and what is important is the experience and the qualifications of that team person.
Yes. Just also to add on in terms of responses, responding to some of these questions from there will be a written response that will provide better clarity and a more complete response to all the questions that are being asked. So you need to look at fuller or more complete responses to your questions.
I think that's a great idea. We will be submitting you all the questions from our audience, and I'm sure they will appreciate a written answer on all of those. I agree. Yeah. Some more people in the audience is asking about transport as a very broad field. And then what is going to be kind of like the key area that the center will be focused on? Is like going to be transport models, road safety, traffic flow, pavement engineering, ITS, etc. Are there any key areas that you can see the focus being put on?
Yes. Well, we appreciate also that the transport is a very broad sector, and we believe that there could be a focus on certain aspects that we would be able to discuss and try and find a more a feasible sort of scope within the transport sector that program could work with. It may not start with everything, but maybe a few core areas within the transport sector. Then that will develop, and also we'll look at the demand for specific areas as well. So that should influence which areas within the transport sector are more in demand, and that would enable the center to run on a cost recovery basis once we've got a critical mass of participants. So that will also be influenced by the demand that exists. But some of the courses are more general, that cut across all transport sectors. So it is a leadership development area. So it might cover superficial manner, and then maybe a few in detail, but the focus should be on leadership development rather than extended technical competence.
Good. Good. I'm seeing a couple of questions that are asking if the center needs to be based in a recap country, or it can be based anywhere else in Africa.
Yes, we had some discussions also internally about that. What would prefer, for obvious reasons, if it could be in an Africa partner country, that also helps with the contacts with the institutions, because it's a country that we already worked in. But that's not a prerequisite. If it can be demonstrated that it will be better housed elsewhere or located elsewhere, then yeah, people should not feel that if they can't in their proposal, if they feel none of the partner countries are suitable, they are free to select or to identify and propose a different location. But we're just saying it's easy to work with countries that we're already working, but that's not a prerequisite. That will not prejudice any bid. Yeah.
That's great. I'm sure this will broaden the potential bag of applicants and bidders for this project. We also got some more questions asking about the scale of the project, and if you have any any preconditions or any targets regarding the number of people that will be reached, the length of teaching time per person, or if you are targeting more grad or post-grad people to teach. So have you gotten a sense of a bit kind of like what is the target population for this center?
Yes, the ideal candidates will be graduates who already have a degree in a related field, who also have some work experience, not specified, and people who want to develop themselves into leaders of the sector. So it's that person that we are targeting, who already has a technical qualification and who is interested in now taking that up and consolidating that, and then taking themselves towards a leadership role, to play a leadership role in the sector.
Right. And someone else is asking if RECAP will find the people to be trained, or is the institution that wins the bid the ones that will be finding these graduates?
Yes, we expect, because remember, we've stated clearly that this is a program that will be implemented by the appointed entity on a cost recovery basis. So we expect them to identify. We can always discuss and suggest, make suggestions, but the responsibility is upon the entity to find these graduates, and because they will have to create awareness among institutions, among companies that there is this program, and then maybe make study tours or speaking tours to these institutions or to certain areas to promote this TSLDP and the CSSTL.
Do you have...
So that will feed into the education of the... Yeah. Sorry?
Right. I was asking if you had envisioned how many graduates or how many people do you think will get training thanks to this center?
On the basis of their business, what would make business sense? Is it 20 at the moment?
Kululeko, I think you broke a bit over there, so maybe if you could repeat your answer.
On the issue of the number of participants. Hello, am I still?
Yes, you're still online. The only the connection breaks a bit.
Okay. What was my answer to that is to the last question in terms of the numbers of trainees or participants. What I was saying was that that is one of the aspects that the business plan will have to determine, because this assignment or the CSSTL will be run on a commercial basis, and on the basis of that business plan, the service provider will have to determine the numbers that will make it more business sense for them to include in the training. So it will not be up to RECAP to prescribe how many people should be trained, but they are sort of ballpark figures, but it should make business sense for the entity to enable it to run the courses and develop courses and run them.
Of course. Right.
I don't know if I'm still not.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry, Edson, you were saying?
I'm not sure if it was. I was still online, or maybe something got lost again.
Yeah.
No, we can move on to the next question.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah.
No.
There are some questions asking about if you would be willing to make public who would be the interested bidders for this tender. So potential opportunities of collaboration, co-creation, and as you were saying before, or even consortiums with universities or tertiary institutions. And yeah, there's a couple of questions along those lines. Is RECAP open to before the deadline of them for submitting the proposals to share which are the interested bidders in this tender?
No, unfortunately, we're not in a position to do that. But I should note that one of the conditions of the tender is to ensure that one bidder is only part of one tender, exclusively to one tender. So one institution cannot be in multiple bids for the same tender procedure. But unfortunately, we're not in a position to share information about interested bidders.
Okay, that's I think that's helpful, and that clarifies a couple of the questions that were coming from the audience. Thank you very much. There's also other questions with regards to the future of the center, on, for example, who will pay for this center in the long run, once the funds for RECAP have, once they are over or if they don't get extended.
Yes, I think we made it clear that RECAP will support the development and establishment of the center, and possibly our sister program HVT will take on from 2020 onwards. The idea being RECAP support is for the establishment, but the running and of the center will have to be on a cost recovery basis. So it would not require, if it is properly established, there's a proper business plan, it will not require additional funding from RECAP. The center would actually be able to enter into partnerships with other entities to leverage funding for what areas of endeavor they might want to do. So it will not be support similar to the one that RECAP is providing, because that's just providing for the establishment and getting it off the ground so that it can be run on a cost recovery basis. So if it still requires RECAP support after 2 or 4 years, then it's not on a cost recovery path. So that business plan may not have been the most commercially viable one.
Right. I have one more question with regards to eligibility again. And the question is if a university that is part of the study team can become the host organization for the center.
I don't see why not, as long as it meets the requirements that are in terms of the location and the other prerequisites. I think it's not necessarily excluded.
Right.
Unless there are clear conflict of interest in doing so, but I cannot see that at the moment. So, Edson, do you have anything to say on
that? Nothing to add. I think it's something we can consider, and the evaluation panel will assess.
Okay, good to hear. Another very technical and specific question, and I know we have touched a bit on this at the beginning of the questions section. Someone is asking if, besides the team leader and the education management expert, if there are any other specific technical or professional services that are required, like a town planner, or is it depending on the approach that each potential bidder is designing and submitting the corresponding business plan, and then should they be the ones deciding which other potential expertise or technical qualifications might be needed, besides the two that the terms of reference is asking for?
Yes, the terms of reference also provides for ad hoc specialists as defined by the bidding entity. That is, if they feel they require additional skills that these two core experts do not possess to complement them, there is provision for ad hoc experts in addition to these two. So the bidding entity would be able to make those proposals based on the assessment of the skills of the core experts. So yeah, there is provision for that.
That's also good to hear. Great. Someone is asking if it's possible to have funds available up front, or if it's only as it's described in the budget paper.
Funds for what?
I understand that that they realize that they mean that if they will have funds available upfront as soon as the contract is awarded, or if it will follow all the timeline in the budget paper.
Okay. RECAP does not provide advance payment or funds in advance. So the entities would have to find the budget upfront, and then excuse me, and then they can fund the operations until they get paid per milestone as indicated in the TOR.
Good.
If I can add, I should say that we are open to negotiating alternative payment schedules or payment terms. So we're very much open to negotiating payment terms. And if you want to suggest any alternative payment schedules in your financial proposal, please go ahead and do that.
That's great to know as well. Perfect.
Yeah.
Then our last question, because I'm afraid we're running a bit out of time, and is one which I think is pretty broad, and is that in your opinion, what do you think this Center for Sub-Saharan Transport Leadership is trying to achieve in respect to the complex challenges of transport in Africa?
I would ask you to repeat that question, because
yes, sure.
I didn't get the first part.
It is a very broad question, and it goes in line of asking what do you think the Center for Sub-Saharan Transport Leadership will achieve in terms of solving some of the challenges that the transport in Africa has as of today.
I'm sorry, it's been breaking up, and your question is, I don't hear you fully. You speak and then you break up, and I'm not sure I get the gist of your.
Yes, I'm sorry. I know the connection is being a bit difficult today, and I apologize to all our audience ahead of time for the difficulties. But you will have the recording later on, and yeah, the question was mostly about what do you think this center will achieve to tackle the challenges of the transport challenges in Africa?
Yes, that is the expectation, because there's already been. I mean, this is an area that has been identified as seriously lacking, particularly in sub-Saharan. There are no courses or institutions that provide courses in leadership development, and that has meant that the sector has remained with no leaders really that can take the issues that bedevil the transport sector on the global map. So it is important that this be developed from the grassroots, so that people are built up from the ground up, and then there will be leaders for the future. Because there currently is. That is an identified gap that needs to be filled. So the challenges are huge. There's no doubt about that. But we can only start from somewhere, and we hope that will lead us to where we want to be in the sector in terms of leadership.
That's right. I'm sure you will achieve a lot, and thanks to this Center for Transport Leadership, and for educating and teaching next generations on how to best tackle these transport challenges. I'm afraid that we have come to the end of our scheduled time for this webinar. But thank you so much for joining us today. If you want to watch the webinar again, we will be emailing it to you shortly, so look out for that in the near future in your inbox. Again, a big thanks to Kululeko and Edson for taking the time to speak with us today. If you'd like to learn more about the tender, please feel free to send an email to recap.procurement@cartno.com. And on behalf of Devex, I would like to thank you all for joining us today, and I hope you will join us for our next online event. Thank you.